everyone, and welcome back to the TBM crew. Today, I'm so happy to have with me Chris McAuley and Larry from the Horror Fan Club Kenya. Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Today, we have to talk about amazing projects going on. Chris, tell us about everything you have in your hands right now.
Right. Okay. I've been working on some Terminator stuff, some
Wow.
Doctor Who stuff. Um, let's see. I've got a couple of audio dramas coming out in sci-fi. We've just launched our Kickstarter for Dracula sequel comic.
Yes.
So I'm doing that with Dacre Stoker, so Bram Stoker's great grandnephew. So it's the sort of official authentic sequel to Dracula in graphic novel format. We also have a strip in there from a Buffy the Vampire Slayer writer called Denise Cian. So yeah, it's been busy. It's been busy.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Like in comparison, I think I'll just be like, hey, I have one thing I'm doing.
No, but Larry, tell us about it's very important what you're doing, because I was telling you're my pioneer on Kenya and your horror series you're running. Tell us about that.
So currently we are in the post-production stage of our horror web series. We decided to, initially it was to become like a horror feature film, because I was a little bit iffy. I just wanted to get it done and over with. So upon like reaching out to certain collaborators, they decided, why not make it a series, because it's full of like amazing plots, plot lines, characters. So in a way, we just wanted to make it and sort of like put everything out there in all its entirety, instead of just leaving some stuff out into like, rather constricting it into like a full 1 hour 30-minute feature. So yeah, that's what I'm currently up to, or that we are up to here at Horror Fan Club Kenya.
Wow, that's awesome. What's the most challenging things you have in your hands right now?
Currently, for the horror web series, initially, let me just go before we even came up with the idea. In Kenya, like horror, as said in previous lives, in Kenya, horror is treated like as a no-go zone. We have like a lot of conservatives. Kenya, basically, as a nation, is so religiously driven for a majority of the population. So getting to reach out to collaborators, to partners, to institutions, to organization was a real task. But initially, finally we broke the barrier and got people who have more liberal minds and were up to take up and guide us and help us through the entire process. A majority, like the major setback we might have had was COVID, because initially the horror web series was to be shot before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. So we had to like put things down, try not to, like the country was locked down, and we had to wait. And after even opening it, we had like some restrictions, like, oh, if you're going to shoot a film, you cannot be more than 15 people in a room or 10 people in a room. So I remember at the beginning when we were shooting, we had to like tell some of the cast, like, shush, you go away, give yourself time, do something out there as we shoot. And when they came back, it was like roll call. Okay, how many people do you have in the room? Oh yeah, light guy, leave the lights on and go. we do not want anybody to come in here and say we are flaunting some of the regulations. That was interesting. It actually helped build the film, in terms of like the cast really embodied the film while the cameras were rolling, because maybe there was a scene that two people were in the room, and it just it pulled the focus into the film, and I think they got a better understanding to it. Other than that, marketing and distribution is going so far smoothly. We will have our official premiere on Calabars. I'll send you a link, Mar. It's sort of like an African YouTube. Yeah, you can find like a lot of shorts, not only horror, but other genres as well there. Luckily, we were one of the first horror film, or we will be the first horror film to be showcased there. Yeah, and we also have like on site like physical premieres coming in
Yes.
September. So that's something to look forward to. Yeah.
That's awesome, and that's very near.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I haven't thought of the pandemic affecting this kind of things. Chris, have you any of your projects have been affected because of the pandemic too? Any delay or?
Not really, because primarily it's right. You know, it's not like Larry where you have to go on site and do things. I sit at the computer and just write stuff. You know, I think the most maybe the games, maybe the tabletop games, like, you know, there's been a worldwide paper shortage, some publishing delays. Some of the stuff I've written for Doctor Who coming out in book format was, I think, delayed for about 4 months.
Yes.
That's to do with the paper shortage and stuff like that. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your web series, Larry? What's it about? Are you like to tell us a little bit about it? Because I'm interested in this now.
Of course. Yeah, I will. Mar, can you hear me? I remember the last time I told this story, you betrayed me and told me you know nothing about the film. So here
because
I go.
It's true. I know nothing.
No, we've done a couple of videos, and like, okay, fine. For the sake of Chris, I have told you nothing. But so basically, the film is centered around like this individual who's sort of like being manipulated by a close friend. Based off jealousy. All right, this is how this plot goes. I am sucky at explaining plots. So it follows the mind of a young doctor who is in love with a lady, and this lady is also part of a social circle of friends, who in this social circle of friends there's also another lady who has a romantic interest in her. So where the film begins is whereby like sort of like an unrequited love for the doctor, and this sort of drives him into a state of schizophrenia, whereby his emotions rather are left to are weak, are left to are free to manipulation. So this lady who was rejected sort of like creates this web of deceit, web of disloyalty by manipulating his weak mind into doing horrific acts to said friends who are in this small circle of buddies. Yeah, in a nutshell, I think the thing I went different with is sort of like, you know, when you watch a horror film and you see, okay, this is the villain. For instance, let's go with Mars' favorite, Evil Dead. Like, you see the film from the point of view of the victims. They are being hunted down. But for my film, we are seeing it through the eyes of the doctor, who's sort of like orchestrating some of these murders, some of these insane acts of horror towards his friends. But at the same time, you sort of like are in his mind and sort of sympathize, and sort of like a oh, those people deserved it. Those people deserved these bad things happening to them because, you know, he is the victim. So I don't know if I've explained it in a suitable way, because I'm trying not to give out much of the story and let it be seen. But that is basically the story. It's a psychological thriller. Think of Silence and the Lambs and Hush from by Michael Flanagan. Those are some of like the key films that I drew my story from, in terms of like the story, the cinematography, the plot, and the characters as well.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we were telling before that because he's also making, he's trying to make known some African legends from the horror folklore in Africa, and right, and he's making these amazing short videos on TikTok about 30 seconds of this legend, right? And he has a legend, right, that I can't remember the name. I'm sorry, Larry. Of the
I can I
Yes,
can tell you.
yeah,
I can tell.
tell him
Yeah.
that it has a relation,
So
it has a connection with that legend in the African folklore. Tell him.
yeah, the thing is, the entire film has like sort of this undertone of African, not only Kenyan, but African urban legends and myths and warriors, royalties that were there a long time ago. So this undertone is that a lot of these masculine figures, these prominent figures in African society were always brought down by women. Case scenario, there's this legend called Luanda Magere. It's a
That's the
Kenyan
name.
urban legend. Yes, Luanda Magere, that's the
Yes.
name. So basically, this man was so brutal. He was one of the most feared warrior. He was very successful in every battle, but his power was his weakness was his shadow. So legend has it that one night when he was sleeping with his wife, whom he got from the enemy tribe, or rather was sort of like a double agent to the enemy tribe, he slipped out his secret that you can kill me by piercing my shadow. So the next day when they went to battle, the lady, submitted this information to the enemy tribe, and they stabbed his shadow, and that's how he died standing. He turned into stone and died while standing. So a lot of African legends, warriors, royalties were have this sort of like mishap when it comes to like their partners, people who they know, especially women who bring them down. I don't know if it was a feminist thing back in the day, but yeah, that's sort of like a majority of urban legends and how they go in Africa.
So that's actually very similar to Substance and Delilah.
Yeah,
Very similar,
yeah.
isn't it? There's similar motifs there. You also have in Genesis with the concept of the woman being the downfall of the man.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting parallels there to the ancient Mesopotamian folklore as well.
Yeah.
Gilgamesh, I think, is another example of that. So interesting, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very interested in African horror, African folklore, even more if there's very little material from your country. Yeah, I'm sure you have the responsibility. You are the standard now of horror in your country. Do you know that? Are you aware of that?
Nope. Stop it, more. I have a question to Chris. Him being an author of some of like the amazing books and works that he's done. When it comes to script writing, that's not particularly my forte, especially when it comes to like horror films. Heaven knows the last time I read a book, but when it comes to like coming up with a story, because for me, my writing process is more of just like deriving certain aspects of different films, books, not books, I don't read books, comics, games. That's how I sort of like come up with a story now based on that, like going all through all these legends and whatnot. That's how I come up with a story. I just can't get a paper and start writing, or go on my laptop and just start writing a horror story. I want to know, like, how is your process when it comes to that?
Very visual. It'll actually come from one scene. I'll have a scene in my mind, and then I'll work backwards and forwards from that scene. So let's try and get an example. I have written a science fiction horror story. And the scene that I saw in my mind was a computer, like a sort of an AI that invades the neural chip of one of two technicians that come in to try and shut the AI down. And he invades the chip and then causes the technician to kill his friend brutally. And then the AI removes itself from the neural chip, and the technician looks at his friend and realizes he's done it, and then commits suicide. And the AI is watching it's experiencing those human aspects. So then I take that sort of concept, that visual image, and go back to who is AI? Why are technicians coming in to stop the AI? And then the AI started to develop personality, gender. It chooses a female gender. It's trying to understand itself, and then it feels attacked. So then it kills the technicians. Then it starts to think about what that means. So it starts to then go out through the ship and go into the neural chips of people in the ship, and forces them to experience like lust and murder and all the different kinds of emotions. So on the ship, everybody's starting to, basically descend into psychosis. There are a few who don't, and they're trying to survive on the ship, and it continues on from there. But it was that one central image. For Dracula, it was pretty simple. It was the image of Mina being forced to drink Dracula's blood and pus, her lips forced up against cold dead flesh, and she's gagging, she's vomiting over his chest because she's being sick, because it's a dead body. So you just imagine, whenever Dracula famously takes his fingernail and cuts open, that's a dead body. So what happens to the dead body when you cut into it? You've got pus, you've got, there's some liquid there, there's mucus, there's all sorts of things, and that's getting forced down your throat. That's a particularly horrific scene that people have eroticized through films because it's too horrific for people to contemplate. But that was the central image that I had, and then I was able to work back from that. Like, why did Dracula do that? What happens whenever the heroes burst into the room and see that? Dracula basically takes Mina's head, looks at her, laughs, and throws her across the bed on full display to show how defiled she actually is. And those are the images that I have, and then I kind of extrapolate that, go backwards and forwards. So I think if you get a central image, visual image, then you can get the theme, you can get the characterization, and then what you're doing is working backwards to try and get the reasoning and justification for that. And then, obviously then you project it forward to a conclusion. Sometimes you can get two snapshots where maybe it's one in the middle of the action and one at the end of the action, at the end of the story. So you know what you're working towards, but you'll have that one central point. A bit like Alien. If you think Alien, the one central point in Alien is Alien bursting out of the chest.
Yeah.
Famously, whenever they were reading, 20th Century Fox was reading through Dan O'Bannon's original script, they thought it was crap. It was because it's vastly different from what you see in the film. If you read the script, it's available online. But the one scene they did like was the chest burster. And then they took that scene, they bought the script because of the chest burster scene, and then they worked backwards and forwards from that scene.
Oh.
And that's something that I've noticed a lot in writing and in film. You have to be very careful because you can't just focus on one central scene. You've got to have a series of smaller scenes around it. So you have the one central scene that it's going to be remembered for. That your work is going to be remembered for, but you've got to have then little punctuation moments of, like little jump scares, or depending on the type of film you have.
Yeah.
How you described your piece, I see it as obsession. I actually had an image in my head of obsession.
Yes. Oh wow, that was way spot on. That was spot on.
So like you have if I was writing it. Okay, how I would write it is the obsession is the forerunner for demonic possession, and because of the demonic possession, you have a stage called obsession, and then you have integration afterwards, and the obsession is precursor to the integration. So if I was writing something similar to yours, I would see the obsession with the Doctor, and that obsession then is a spirit that gets or a demon that gets latches on then to the Doctor, plays onto the Doctor's past, his feelings of failure, entrapment, all of that sort of stuff, and then it then becomes a digression. So the demon takes over, and it's full on integration, and then destruction of the ego, destruction of the self.
Yes.
There's nothing left except the demon. So that's how I would write it, because I would see that very clearly in my head. Those would be the key points.
Oh my gosh, that was so freaky. Because that's the thing. Actually, the thing that is so intriguing about your style and my style is sort of like I fear using your style because, as you said, like putting the doctor's obsession as the central and like core of the film. I was afraid to do that because instead of working on one particular scene or rather one particular character and branching out forth, for me, I think I'd get so carried away and the script will never have an ending or never like have a beginning because I'll just think of the many possibilities of how I can, sort of like branch this out and create the different scenarios, the different emotions. Like it is so unending. So I think that's why I try to limit myself by, constructing like pieces of like the plots and just sort of like stitching them together so that I don't get too far. Because when I write, like, let's say, let me say like scene 1, episode 1, I know that this is tied to the final episode, so I cannot go beyond those borders. So it is up to me to like flesh it in and like just put everything together instead of just spiraling out of control. Because I remember there's a time on set, like this I introduced like just randomly introduced like sort of like a decoy villain into the film so that people can believe maybe this is the person orchestrating all this. But to me, it felt like this person, this sort of decoy villain is not a major villain, but he can have a backstory, he can like, fit into all this. We can tell his story again. But I was like, nope, Larry, this story is not about this villain. It's about, this sort of person. So I was like, just focus on this and finish it. If you want to create something else, there will be, sequels to this or prequels if you want. So I think that's something I found intriguing.
Here's the power of film. What you can do is you can use an actor's nuance to hint at a backstory that you want to tell. Mm-hmm. So what you can do is you can give Phil the actor in one of the backstories you want to tell, and get them to hint the nuances. And that's the power of film. But yeah, you've got to. I think when you're writing something, all your writing has to fit the purpose, the drive, and the goal, and the message of the narrative. So you do, that people talk about this thing with killing your darlings. I hate that phrase, but it's that concept of it slows things down. It doesn't keep them going to the end narrative. You have to get rid of it.
Oh wow, I am in awe. Like I have no words. More, I think Chris has I think if we give Chris time, like he will figure out what my story is even without seeing the film or even reading the script.
There is something I need to ask you, Chris, because I have had about your project or your work on the Terminator. Yes, I've had an avalanche of audience super interested in it.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yes, okay. Yes. I mean, people are just going crazy. I think it's my generation. I don't know, because I'm also. I mean, anything that has to be with it also caught my attention. So I really, really want you to tell us, especially on that project, how are you involved in it and how is it working on?
Yeah, I got a phone call. I'll tell you how it started. I got a phone call from an RPG game company about 3 o'clock in the morning, my time. Because most people know I don't sleep. I just work. Mm-hmm. And it was, do you want to write a series of narratives for the official Terminator RPG series. And I said, yeah, of course. So, what happens with RPG stories is it's the short stories that inform the games master. So you think of Dungeons and Dragons, the games master, about the world. So it's really helping craft the world for the player and for the games master. So I came up with a series of stories for the first Terminator RPG, and there's more coming. I have to be careful what I say because I can't give it all away. But again, it was that there's an uncompromising vision about the Terminator that I have, and a lot of it's to do with distance of personality of, especially if you look at the first film, there's disassociation from what we would call personality with the Terminators, and they're just killing machines, relentless killing machines that don't feel anything. So it's like taking human psychopathy and taking that to the nth degree. But it's this nightmarish world. The future stuff is a nightmarish world, and it's where we're heading. It's actually where I think it's almost a form of sci-fi prophecy, because it's where we're going. I mean, we're disassociated from ourselves. We're disassociated from other people. We're obsessed with technology. Technology is not just a tool now. We're a slave to it. If you think you're not telling what you do first thing when you wake up, it's not talk to your spouse. It's not go and get a cup of coffee. It's reach for your phone and start scrolling through Facebook. I guarantee it is. So you have become part of a systematic algorithm. And that's part of what the Terminator represents. I term it the style of writing. I think is tech noir, the dark side of technology, and it shows how that technology will eventually rule our lives as a form of Skynet, because we willingly allow it. And now we have this form of you've got transhumanists. You talk about cybernetics, cyberpunk movement, and that's coming into play very quickly. I mean, if you think whenever we were all growing up, if you think what technology was and what technology is now, technology is now almost grafted to our face with the phones and the headsets and all of that sort of stuff. So, now we do actually have technology goes inside our bodies with microchips and all that. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not a Luddite or anything like that, but the Terminator is the next logical step for that, where we start to give over parts of our lives to automation, AI automation, and once AI becomes sentient, we don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know.
Yeah.
And that kind of the creation in our own image. We've always been fascinated by the theological myths of God creating man in his own image. And if that's the case, you should be extremely scared of God. If you look at mankind with the jealousy and the anger and the hatred and the violence and all that, that's coming from allegedly a celestial, omnipotent divine being. That's everything that's in it, and everything that's in us is getting transferred to the machine.
Yeah.
But it'll be magnified. So that's Terminator 1. Terminator 1's quite dark. Terminator 2 is something slightly different. Terminator 2, the Terminator now has the capacity to learn, to feel, to have emotions, to care whenever John Connor takes the chip out and switches over. And that's in the special edition of the DVD. That didn't come out in the theatrical cut. But John Connor isn't just the savior of humanity. John Connor is the paragon of humanity, and is able to teach humanity to a machine, to one of the models that was sent to kill him and his mom. Right? Yeah. And then that goes into the future, because John Connor obviously reprograms that machine to come back to the past to save him.
Yeah.
And you see that in Terminator 3 as well. But that's one of the fascinating elements of Terminator 2. And the other one is that Sarah Connor has gone from being this mother figure to this very hard, almost machine-like warrior. Look at her muscle structure. Look at how she looks. She's comfortable with weapons. She goes to kill Miles Dyson, even though Miles Dyson has a family. She's happy to do that, in front of Miles' family. She might have a little bit of regret about it, but she has become the Terminator.
Yeah.
She has ultimately become a Terminator. So when people say the Terminator 2 is a feminist movie, I would be concerned about that, because yes, she's acting with a motherly instinct to protect her son, perhaps even like the Virgin Mary, a motherly instinct to protect, because remember, John Connor's the Messiah, so she's like the Virgin Mary, and she's got a motherly instinct to protect humanity. But the way she goes about it is extremely dangerous. And again, she becomes mechanized. She's a mechanized human being. Whereas the Terminator, in this one, Arnie, learns to smile, actually cares very much about John. John cares very much about him. At the end, I think everyone was crying at the end whenever he and he even says, I cannot self-terminate.
Yeah.
He cannot self-terminate because he understands the value of his life now and what life is. So he cannot self-terminate. So he has to get John to do it for him. Very, very deep themes with the second film that a lot of people don't get. But again, these are the stories that I'm bringing out in the RPG game.